5 minutes after 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. Can you imagine if you had a loved one who was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease or any kind of dementia, or maybe multiple sclerosis or autism? Now, I don't want to get anybody's hopes up, but can you imagine if none of those diagnoses were correct and instead it was just a vitamin B12 deficiency? Before you say, oh, come on, nobody's going to make that mistake. Let me tell you, we've got an author right now with a book that does lay out some scenarios where that is possible, including depression, fatigue, mental illness. Fatigue is the one I've heard the most with vitamin B12, and I'm not so sure why. Actually, vitamin B12A is deficient in our normal diets, and B, why a supplement actually helps. That's why Sally M. Pacholok is on the phone, and I hope I'm saying her name right. She'll correct me in just a second. She's a registered nurse, a media personality in her own right. She does lectures on this topic, and she's got a book called Could It Be B12? An Epidemic of Misdiagnoses, the underground classic that has saved lives. And by the way, there's a connection to stroke in this conversation as well. May is Stroke Awareness Month. Sally Pacholok. Good morning, Sally.
Hi, thank you for having me.
And first off, am I saying your name correctly?
It's Pacholok.
Pacholok, okay, thank you. And did the echo go away? I need to know. This is kind of a technical question, I guess. Is the echo improved? Sally, do it.
A little bit's improved, yes.
Okay, so there might be a delay too. I apologize for that. Well, anyway, thank you for being on the air with us. And I'll put Joe's microphone on. Sorry, Joe.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
Sorry. Well, I started off with the information that's on the back of the book, basically laying out Alzheimer's disease, multiple sclerosis, autism, forgetfulness, all perhaps connected to a lack of vitamin B12. How accurate is that statement?
It's very accurate. Vitamin B12 deficiency is a medical disorder. It is not holistic health or alternative medicine. A B12 deficiency causes injury to the brain, the nerves, the blood, even the vascular system, which can cause strokes. It's a systemic disease like diabetes is.
Really?
So,
and how many of us have this?
Medical journals report 25% of the U.S. population is low in B12 or have a deficiency. The CDC reports 3%, but they're using ranges if your serum B12 is under 200. But we know when people have a serum B12 between 200 and 400, if you do other sensitive tests, you can prove they actually have a B12 deficiency. So a good estimate, at least 15% of the U.S. population, which would be at least 48 million Americans, have a B12 deficiency.
And are many of them children, or is this something that we only acquire as we get older?
It can affect in any age, from infants to geriatrics. People over the age of 55 are higher at risk for a variety of reasons, but infants and young children, toddlers, can absolutely have a B12 deficiency. And the number one sign and symptom in pediatrics for B12 deficiency is developmental delay. Many children who are diagnosed on the autism spectrum actually can have a B12 deficiency. If you do not understand B12 deficiency and you allow it to continue, you can cause permanent brain and nerve injury.
Permanent.
There are malpractice cases where patients, young adults, middle-aged adults, and older adults, have been misdiagnosed for a long period of time, and some of them are in wheelchairs because it destroys the myelin. The myelin is a fatty protective covering that surrounds all of your nerves. So people can get peripheral neuropathy, which are numbness and tingling to the hands and feet. That's how it starts. It progresses and it destroys the balance. So when people walk, they have difficulty walking, which leads to frequent falling. And it does cause brain problems where they get brain atrophy, which means brain shrinkage. And it does cause confusion, forgetfulness, dementia.
Wow.
One of the differential diagnoses of dementia is you always have to rule out B12 deficiency.
Sally, I have a question. If we have a B12 deficiency, and it's caused because our body is not absorbing it naturally from whatever foods we eat, how does a supplement help? If we're not absorbing it, how could we absorb it when we have a supplement?
Well, that's the number. There's three major reasons why people are deficient. One is malabsorption syndromes. That means that they're taking enough B12 that's in food. It's just that their bodies can't process it, metabolize, and therefore it's not delivered to the cells. The other is diet, because B12 is only found in animal products, which means people who are vegans, vegetarians, macrobiotic diets, they're going to be higher at risk. And then the third are genetic mutations, where people actually have genetic disorders where their bodies can't process B12.
Okay, so the first one and the third one, how does a supplement help? If you can't process it or absorb it?
The natural way from food. The RDA for B12 is 2.4 micrograms per day. It's a very, very small, tiny amount. So if your body, for us to take B12 from the food, it travels down to the stomach. The stomach produces hydrochloric acid and a protein called intrinsic factor. Those have to be released and bound to that, and then it takes several steps going through the gastrointestinal system to the ileum, where we have receptors that transfers it into the body. Therefore, if you have a problem with your stomach releasing those factors, you have Crohn's disease, problems with the ileum, you're not going to be able to process it. So what you do to treat it is you have to give injections where you bypass the gastrointestinal tract, or you can give high-dose sublingual B12 under the tongue that absorbs through the vessels in that manner. But you're giving a much higher dose.
Okay.
You're giving 1,000 micrograms versus the 2.4 that normal people can absorb from their diet.
Is there any reason to be afraid that we are giving information to people that they will just go out and get vitamin B12 and say, you know what, I'm not taking any chances, I'm just going to go get some, melt it under my tongue, and I'll be safe? Could that actually be a problem too?
No, because vitamin B12 is non-toxic, it's water-soluble. The doses that we're giving to people to take is way under what they should be giving. What we advocate is this. Patients, and we'll go over the signs and symptoms of B12 deficiency, if you have signs or symptoms or at risk, you need to get properly tested. Why? Because you need to know, do I have a B12 deficiency? Why is that important to know? Because it'll help your doctor diagnose the main reason as to why, and it might give them a different reason, like looking into celiac disease. You want to try to find the underlying cause of the B12 deficiency, number one. And number two, you might be able to get off some of the other drugs that you're on that we're oftentimes physicians and other clinicians are prescribing other drugs for the symptoms of B12 deficiency. And also the other reason you need to know is because some people do have true injuries that they have malpractice suits. Once you start taking B12, you're not going to have any kind of evidence that this is what you had. So it's important to know. We don't want people to be blindly taking things. But if you're healthy and you're feeling good and you have no problems and risk factors, yes, older adults should be taking B12 under their tongue for health and prevention, to prevent balance problems, to prevent confusion, dementia, for brain and nerve health. Absolutely.
Now, Sally, you said it's a simple test to do, to take the B12, to know if you're going to take the B12. What is a simple test? Is it just a blood test?
It's a blood test, and there's one that's a urine test. The test, there's a serum B12, but you always have to use the other test called methylmalonic acid. It can be done in the urine or in the blood. Those two need to be done together.
All right. If you're going for a regular blood test, you could just ask the doctor just to check for your B12 level, in addition to the other?
We should be screening for B12 deficiency like you're screened for elevated cholesterol and lipid panel. You're screened for diabetes and thyroid disorders. This is a medical disorder that can cause a great amount of health problems in patients.
Over-the-counter bottles. You buy B12. What is the normal dosage that they usually sell?
They sell them in all sorts of different variations. In a multivitamin pill, there's 6 micrograms. They have a B50 complex that has 50 micrograms.
No, I was just talking about the B12 itself. They have tablets you put under your tongue. It's just B12. Do you know what the normal dosage would be?
That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Okay.
They have numerous different amounts. You can get 100 micrograms. You can get 500 micrograms. You can get 1,000. You can get up to 5,000. There's a whole variety. This is why it's important, again, the signs and symptoms are anything neurologic, anything psychiatric, people who are anemic, because you have to have B12. The other name for B12 deficiency that we interchangeably use is pernicious anemia, which means deadly anemia. People can die from a B12 deficiency. And I think it's because it's a vitamin, people don't take this disorder seriously. But it is. It's been well known for over 100 years. In fact, 3 Americans won the Nobel Prize in Medicine and Physiology back in 1934 for their life-saving discovery. This is a true medical problem it's not being recognized, and we're not actively screening patients for it. And this is why we need to have B12 awareness, and we need to educate the public, but we also need to re-educate the medical community.
Absolutely, yeah. The medical community is one dropping the ball on this one. It sounds like it should be standard.
They are.
What do you call it? Protocol, standard protocol, right? So that's part of what you're doing, right? That's part of this campaign.
Well, that's exactly why I wrote the book, is because working as an ER nurse for 26 years, I daily see patients coming in with signs and symptoms of B12 deficiency or high at risk or other drugs that can impede the absorption of B12, and patients are not being tested. And when you look at all these drugs that they're on, it's not cost effective what we're doing. And we're not saying everybody has a B12 deficiency, but my goodness, we need to test. Just like if you had symptoms for diabetes, there's other symptoms and other medical disorders for it. You're not going to go, well, that's not diabetes. You're going to test the patient. That's all we're asking.
But Sally, I have a question for you. As a nurse, you've been doing this for 26 years, it says in my notes. Did you have circumstances where you had a patient and you said, that looks like a B12 deficiency, and you just said, why don't we just try the therapy, and you could see it reversing itself even before any diagnosis?
No, we would test the patient. That's what I'm trying to get them to test the patient, because it depends on how long you've had the B12 deficiency. Some people will completely reverse their symptoms. Other people will improve maybe 25%. Other people, if their nerves are destroyed or injured, there is not going to be any improvement. And you need to you can't haphazardly treat this. You need to know what you're dealing with.
So you need to know.
I have this?
Well, and
you're not going to just try, because sometimes people are going to say, well, it's a placebo, it didn't work. You kind of want to know what you have. Now, in saying that doesn't mean that you can't give a therapeutic trial. You rule out other conditions. You don't get tunnel vision.
Somebody might do this for themselves. You wouldn't want to do it to your father, your mother, your children. You want them to be but somebody, I know the way people are, they'll be saying, what, I have been feeling sluggish lately, or I have been forgetful lately. I'm going to go try this, and I'm not even going to worry about it, doctor. I know that's how people are.
Well, put this way, if they feel better, then they need to remain on it.
Yeah, that's what I would do.
And again, we're also on the other hand, we're telling people. There's 2 rules to look at this. I think one day that there will be they are recommending older adults that we should be screening patients for B12 deficiency, and they should be taking higher doses of B12 than what the RDA is. They want them to be taking 500 to 1,000 micrograms daily for health and prevention. Some people do better on injections than the tablets. And there are so many different, vitamin companies out there. Some of them have a lot of binders and fillers, hard for it to get absorbed. You need to know, you need a reputable brand. And people who are truly deficient and are very symptomatic, that have neurologic involvement, we recommend that they get initial therapy with injections. Okay. And people can give injections just like diabetics give their own insulin. This is not a real hard treatment.
Hang in there just a second, Sally. Sally M. Pacholok is our guest, and we're talking about vitamin B12. She has written a book. It's called "Could It Be B12? An Epidemic of Misdiagnoses." It's a big seller. A lot of people are buying the book. May is Stroke Awareness Month, and I wanted to bring that into the conversation. How does B12 help prevent strokes?
Well, actually, a true B12 deficiency can cause strokes. The reason for this, another test that we use to help diagnose B12 deficiency is testing someone's homocysteine. Homocysteine is a protein in our blood, and we have metabolic pathways in our body. For homocysteine to be turned into another protein, methionine, you have to have B12 as a cofactor, or that reaction does not take place, and homocysteine builds up in the blood. Homocysteine, it causes our blood vessels to lose their elasticity. It makes it harder for them to dilate inner lining. And that inner lining damage allows cholesterol, collagen, calcium. The inner lining of our blood vessels form these thick deposits and plaques. So it does cause vascular clots, not just strokes, any place in the body. Pulmonary embolisms, heart attacks, DVT, like a deep vein thrombosis. We know that elevated homocysteine causes thrombosis, which is a blood clot. And what causes high homocysteine? A vitamin B12 deficiency, folic acid deficiency, B6, and there's some other problems. But when we have patients that are severely B12 deficient, their homocysteine is very markedly elevated, and it's at risk for clots. That's a well-known fact. And that just goes to show you what a knowledge deficit is out there. We know B12 is so critical for the brains, the nerves, and the blood because it does cause severe anemia to the point where it can become so severe that you actually need a blood transfusion. Those three are like huge. But the other kicker is it does cause vascular clots.
We earlier you gave us 3 ways where B12 could be low. The second one of the 3 you gave us was if somebody had a vegetarian or especially a vegan diet. Do those people who are listening, and I've heard this before, that vegans need to take a B12 shot or a B12 vitamin. If I wanted to stay vegan but didn't want to take a pill, is there a vegetable out there at all that has B12 in it, or is it absolutely have to be an animal product?
B12 is not found in grains, cereals, vegetables, or fruits naturally. It's only found in animal products. Now, they are fortifying, cereals are putting B12 in there. But people have difficulty in absorbing, and they're using cyanocobalamin. Our bodies, cyanocobalamin is synthetic, and our bodies have to actually convert it into the active forms, which is methyl B12 and adenylyl B12. Some people have difficulty in that conversion. There are certain drugs out there, for instance, proton pump inhibitors called Prilosec, omeprazole, that people use for gastric reflux disease or people use for ulcers. Those drugs impede the parietal cell, which is the stomach cell, to secrete hydrochloric acid and intrinsic factor, 2 factors that we need to absorb B12. So not only are there gastrointestinal disorders, but there are certain medications out there that if you take chronically long-term, in time will cause a B12 deficiency. There are many different reasons. Another reason, nitrous oxide that dentists use for dental procedures, for certain surgeries and medical procedures. That anesthetic inactivates B12 in the body. So it's not a problem if you have a lot of B12 in healthy levels, but if you're low or deficient and you give somebody nitrous oxide, you're going to take up any little stores that they have left, and that person is then severely deficient, and they start having these acute signs and symptoms where we think they're having a stroke.
Oh, wow.
They're having, there's much more to this than they think, oh, it's a vitamin. This is a complicated disorder like diabetes is. Like diabetes can cause blindness. It puts you at risk.
So before we go to a dentist, we need to take a B12.
No, you need to know if you, and again, doing this haphazard, if you're going to get nitrous oxide, yes, you should, but the other problem is when you have people like, say you're diabetic and you have peripheral neuropathy, which is some numbness and tingling, and your doctor told you this is why you have the numbness and tingling. How do you know that you do not have a true B12 deficiency? Why do you think it's just from the diabetes? It could be a combination or it could be solely from B12. The danger is if you go and take, because you know you're having a dental procedure, you take one pill.
Right.
One pill isn't going to, it's going to help a little, but you need to be taking it every day for the rest of your life because you have a problem.
Okay, so help me out with that.
So this one-shot thing, by you taking a pill and say you go to your doctor on that feeling well, he tests you, you're going to screw up your blood tests, and they're going to say, well, it's not B12 deficiency, and that's how you get this kind of a chronic intermittent misdiagnosis. You're confusing the clinical picture of physicians trying to really diagnose you.
All right, Sally, I know this isn't an infomercial, but I know that our listeners right now are saying, I'm going to go buy B12. And I know you're not representing one product, and you don't have to name any product, but I'm just saying, are there good B12s on the shelf and not so good B12s? Like, is there the high-class ones and then the ones that are just worthless?
Well, I've never really gone and studied each and every one, but you want one that you look at the ingredients. You don't want one that has a lot of binders and fillers, and I think it makes more sense to take one that absorbs underneath your tongue. For instance, I have one disorder called autoimmune pernicious anemia. It's a form of B12 deficiency that I have to take B12 for the rest of my life. I've been on it since my early 20s. And I take injections, hydroxycobalamin, that's from a pharmaceutical company that you need a prescription. Any injectable B12, you need a prescription. But I also take a methyladenosol, those are the active forms, under my tongue in between my injections.
So somebody, when you were in your 20s, somebody knew how to diagnose this. So
there's a long story to that. I diagnosed myself, and I proved to my doctor. He did tests. I asked him to test me because I wanted to know. I was macrocytic. I had enlarged red blood cells, which is one classic sign that you do not have to have. They want you to have big cells and be anemic. You do not have to have both. I only had the big cells. And in fact, they sent me to a blood specialist, a hematologist, because they said, you're too young. There's no way you can have pernicious anemia. It only happens in elderly people. I debated with him because he said, there's no way you can have it. He said, okay, I'm going to prove to you that you don't have this. He did all these tests, and lo and behold, 10 days later, he called me back and said, oh, my God, you're the youngest person I've ever seen. That's what kind of struck the interest and the curiosity about this disorder.
I bet.
Because when I was in my 20s, they're saying it can't happen to a young person, and I was already on injections for 2 years before I was sent to him. I could have easily stopped taking the B12 and probably would have developed the symptoms of multiple sclerosis. Why? Multiple sclerosis and B12 deficiency are both demyelinating diseases, and they share the same signs and symptoms.
Wow. Wow. Sally, I need to cut you short only because we're almost out of time, and I have a listener who's been calling in wanting to ask you a question, and then we'll make sure we give out the websites and everything so that we can get people the book. Good morning. Thank you for being patient with us. You're on the air with Sally Pacholok.
Thank you, Sally. Thank you. Very interesting subject. Sally, I have a question real quick. Have you ever noticed or have any patients or people that get tremors, somewhat of tremors in the fingers and pinky, for instance, when they take, cyanocobalamin? My wife is taking cyanocobalamin, and she was really low on B12. She she was paralyzed, and the blood test on an afterthought showed very low levels of B12, and that was an afterthought for the doctors. She took it upon herself, loading up, and at first it was like a rush of drugs. She couldn't believe it. I mean, she said people don't need cocaine, just need B12. However, eventually it started giving her tremors in the fingers. She changed to methylcobalamin and hydrocobalamin, but anyways, have you ever heard of a case of people getting tremors with B12?
Yeah, and I don't mean to be rude.
And, I hear your answer.
Thank you. I don't mean to be rude, but we only have about a minute. Sally, did you want to address that question?
Actually, a B12 deficiency untreated can cause tremors and can be confused with Parkinson's disease. Many times when people are very deficient and low, and when you start therapy, they will have exaggerated neurologic symptoms, like maybe more exaggerated tremors, because they really don't know why that exists, and that frequently happens in children.
Okay.
A deficiency causes the tremors. Taking B12 does not give you tremors.
Okay. I have a copy of the book. I'd like to give it away. It's called Could It Be B12? The rest of us have to go buy it. If you want the one I have, call me right now, 622-WOCA. Sally, do you have a website?
The website is b12awareness.org.
Okay, b12awareness.org. And is the book available on all the other book-selling places and everything?
Yep, Amazon, Kindle, through the publisher, probably even libraries. Anywhere, Barnes & Noble.
All right. We're almost out of time. Good morning. You've got the book. Who's this?
This is Grady.
Grady, you've got the book. It'll be waiting for you.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Sally, what a great interview. Thank you for the great information, and thank you for doing what you're doing. You're changing a lot of lives.
Well, thank you for having me.
That's a good thing to do. All right. We will take a little break. Fox News coming up, and then Fun with Joe.
Fox News Radio, I'm Lillian Wu. 2 men trapped when the West Virginia mine have died. The state agency says early indications are that a coal outburst was responsible for the collapse at Brody Mine No. 1 in Boone County.
It's owned by Patriot Coal, based in St. Louis, Missouri. We also have found that this mine had 253 significant and substantial infractions against it in 2013.
Fox's Molly Henneberg.
We do need to put that into context, that coal mining is a very dangerous industry, and there are a lot of rules and regulations.
Set for 3 defendants in the Boston Marathon bombing charged with helping Dzhokhar Tsarnaev hide evidence. One trial is in June, the other 2 September. And the Mississippi man who pled guilty to making and sending ricin in letters to President Obama and others, learning his fate today. Prosecutors recommending a 25-year sentence. Fox News, we report, you decide.
Right now at Napa, get your favorite flavor of Valvoline Conventional or Max Life Motor Oil for just $3.59 a quart. Buy 5 quarts and you'll also get a $7 mail-in rebate. Yep, $7. Enough to get a plate of bacon with a side of bacon smothered in bacon. Now that's tasty. Conquer the job with Napa Know-How. General states pricing. Sales prices do not include applicable state, local taxes, or recycling fees at participating Napa Auto Parts stores. Offer expires 5/31/14.
It's the golf sale that only comes once a year, and it's the best time to save. It's the Golfsmith Anniversary Sale. Hurry in now for deals like 2 dozen Callaway HX Bite golf balls for only $35. Adidas Adizero shoes, free with the purchase of 2014 Adams Idea iron sets. Free gift cards of up to $75 with purchase. And get 40% off all Snake Eyes and Maggie Lane apparel. It only comes once a year. It's the Golfsmith Anniversary Sale, so hurry in today.
Habitat for Humanity of Marion County is a ministry dedicated to improving lives by providing affordable and decent housing. Help them help others by visiting the Habitat for Humanity Ocala Restore at 926 Northwest 27th Avenue. To schedule a donation, give us a call at 401-0075 and we'll come pick it up. For more information, visit ocalarestore.org. Habitat for Humanity of Marion County. Building homes, building hope, building community.
Attention passengers for Flight 1370. The plane has been delayed at its departure point and will be at least 2 hours late. We apologize for any inconvenience.
Are you serious? It took us over an hour to get here, 2 hours going through security and getting our tickets, and now we have to wait another 2 hours.
Yeah, it's beautiful here, but we're inside this overcrowded airport all day because the plane is stuck in bad weather.
This is the last time we ever do this. When we get back, we're going to Ocala Aviation and getting our pilot's license.
Yeah, we've been talking about that long enough. It's about time we did it. Then we could just fly ourselves and never have to deal with this mess again.
Right. No long lines, no full body groping security, no baggage checks.
Not to mention never losing your luggage. Remind me again why we haven't done that?
Well, we're idiots.
Oh, right.
Attention all passengers for Flight 1370. It looks like the plane is going to be delayed a little bit longer. The airline has lost the pilot's luggage. Isn't it time you got your pilot's license? Call Ocala Aviation today. 352-861-7484. That's 352-861-7484. Hey, you've earned it. Call today.
Here are today's headlines from the source WOCA. Governor Rick Scott's office announced yesterday that he had signed a trio of bills aimed at allaying fears about the state's version of the Common Core education standards. Scott also signed another education bill dealing with school grades. According to Scott's office, the 3 Common Core related measures that he signed yesterday included Senate Bill 864, which requires school districts to set up a process through which parents can contest the selection of certain textbooks and classroom materials. House Bill 7031, which among other things removes all references to Common Core from state law, a set of state standards based on Common Core and using the overwhelming majority of the Common Core standards would still remain in place. And Senate Bill 188, a bill barring schools or school districts from collecting biometric and other personal information. In a related story, under an executive order signed by Scott in September, the state pulled out of the Partnership for the Assessment of Readiness for College Careers, also known by its acronym of PARC, which is an effort by many of the states involved in Common Core to develop tests to measure student learning under the new standards. Education Commissioner Pam Stewart announced in March that the nonprofit group American Institutes for Research would develop Florida's tests. Also, under Scott's executive order, the State Board of Education voted in February to go forward with dozens of changes to Common Core, including reinserting creative writing into the standards and explicitly including calculus guidelines. Stewart and others have argued that the changes justify calling the benchmarks the Florida standards. Scott also signed a bill, which was Senate Bill 1642, related to the new tests from American Institutes for Research being instituted in the 2014-2015 school year. That plan modeled settled on a blueprint developed by Stewart would simplify the formula for grading schools. It would also do away with the penalties schools could currently receive for the grades assigned in the 2014-2015 school year, a plan meant to provide a transition year as schools adjust to the new standards and tests. The Marion County Sheriff's Office is reporting that detectives are working a case of second-degree homicide. The call came around 1:30 p.m. yesterday. Deputies arrived at 5460 Southeast 30th Place, Apartment C, at the Greenfield Apartments here in Ocala. Deputies immediately observed a small dead dog and then the body of a man. The victims had been stabbed. The identity of the deceased man is being withheld until next of kin is informed. Also, deputies found at the scene the suspect, identified as Daniel Trent, 38 years old. Apartment C was leased to Trent. He was transported to the Marion County Sheriff's Office Bureau of Special Investigations. While there, detectives interviewed Trent, who admitted to the murder of the deceased man. Trent was booked into the Marion County Jail at 5:19 p.m. yesterday evening. And Governor Rick Scott signed a wide-ranging tax cut package yesterday that fulfills an election year pledge and could boost sales for businesses through a series of tax-free periods during the typically slower summer months. The signing of the package, House Bill 5601, essentially cuts taxes and fees by $500 million, though some analysts say that total won't be reached in the coming budget year. The cuts also include providing shoppers with sales tax holidays on hurricane gear, school supplies, and energy-saving appliances. Lawmakers already sent a larger part of the tax and fee cuts to Scott, rolling back vehicle registration fees that were increased in 2009. Scott signed that bill, Senate Bill 156, on April 2nd, giving motorists an average savings of $20 to $25 per vehicle. And those are the headlines from The Source, WOCA 96.3 FM and 1370 AM.
The weather is brought to you by myfwc.com. Life jackets save lives. We're in Florida. Partly sunny today with a gusty breeze and a high of 85 to 89. Tonight will be partly cloudy with a shower in spots near the coast late at night. Lows 68 and 76 on the beaches. For tomorrow, times of clouds and sun with a shower or thunderstorm. High 85 to 89. On Thursday, more clouds and sun with a couple of showers and a thunderstorm likely. High 85 to 89. From the Florida Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Joe Lundberg.
Hi, Robin. You look tired.
I am. I've been running all over town.
Why? Why not drive?
I need to get the stupid document notarized.
Well, that's easy. You need personal service.
Duh. That's what I've been looking for.
You need to go see Mark at the Personal Service Center. He can notarize that for you, make copies, fax it wherever, or send it out in the mail. Heck, he can even scan it and email it for you.
Really? Where is he at?
2375 Northeast 25th Avenue, on the corner of Northeast 25th Avenue and 24th Street. You can call him at 789-6683.
Personal Service Center. Thanks, Larry.
Right now at the DIY Home Center outlet, get laminate flooring starting at just 99 cents a square foot, and that includes pad. Plus, if you mention you heard it on WOCA, you get 10% off all flooring. That's right, 10% off all flooring. Get it for less at the DIY Home Center outlet. Drywall screws at the big box stores, $6.47. At DIY, only $4.99. The DIY Home Center outlet. We are your building material closeout store. 2191 Northwest 10th Street, just 2 miles east of I-75.
Veterans are the foundation upon which our freedom is built. Listen to The Source, WOCA, each Thursday at 9 a.m. to Veterans News with Hank Whittier from Vets Helping Vets. You'll hear tribute